So first of all, thank you, Ron. Thank you, Arvest. Thank you, Delta Dental, for allowing us to do this. It's something that is really important from the perspective of looking at economic development from the broad spectrum. I think the next slide is going to show something. We at the Little Rock Regional Chamber have had a long history of supporting outdoor recreation, and one of those things, we ran a campaign several years ago about this didn't just happen. And so one of those things that didn't just happen was the Pinnacle Mountain State Park. Back in the early 70s, my predecessor, Paul Harville, worked with both state and federal folks to try to get the actual facility dedicated as a state park, recognizing that if we're a place where people want to live, obviously it makes it a whole lot easier to become a place where folks want to work and companies want to do business. And so this is something that we're proud of. We don't talk about it a whole lot. We don't talk about that actually before this work began in the early 60s, our organization was a leader in creating the McClellan-Kerr navigational system that you see just out the window here. Well, what does that have to do with recreation? Obviously, if you're a kayaker, if you're a part of the Arkansas Boathouse, if you're a part of the boating community or the fishing community, that has significance to you as well. And my friend, the former head of the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce, Roy Williams, used to say, because we had the same thing here, they used to mow the Arkansas River in Oklahoma City at least once a year because it was literally a trickle. But the McClellan-Kerr navigation system created what we have out here from an Arkansas and I would say a mid part of the country recreational opportunity. So it's something that we've been engaged in for many, many decades. And so as we talk about this today, we're going to talk about it from the perspective of what are we doing now and what are we doing going forward. It's interesting, and we think very prescient that we have folks that are focused on what the next looks like. And I want to introduce some of those people that are with me here today. First of all, we're pleased to be joined by the first gentleman of Arkansas, Bryan Sanders. In addition to his background in political strategy, he's here today as the chairman of the Natural State Advisory Council, something that our esteemed governor put together recognizing the value of outdoor recreation to our economy. This group has been brought together to collaborate between state agency, private business, and notable outdoor recreation leaders to enhance our outdoor recreation experiences, promote tourism, and grow our outdoor economy. So who can tell me what the #1 industry in Arkansas is? Aerospace. Good answer. Who can tell me what the #2 industry is in Arkansas?
Tourism.
That's why they pay her the big bucks. So it not only is about us, it's not only about something for us to do, it's about something that brings other people from other places here to do as well. And Bryan's leading the effort in the work with the Natural State Advisory Council. Please give our first gentleman, Bryan Sanders, a big round of applause. Our next panelist is the person who's already chimed in, just like she should have. Katherine Andrews is our state's first director of the Office of Outdoor Recreation within the Arkansas Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism, and comes to this position from the economic development side of the house, so she understands how that actually works. She is responsible for leading our state's efforts to grow this outdoor recreation economy, increase the collaborative relationships between not only the industry stakeholders in Arkansas, but those from around what I'll call the Mid-South in the country, as well as advocating for the conservation of our natural assets that we don't do a good enough job of on a daily basis. Katherine, we really appreciate your focus on that. Please give Katherine Andrews a big round of applause. And our final panelist for today is no stranger to this world. He actually started with the Little Rock Parks and Recreation Department when he was about 8, because it was 2006. He's been improving our city parks and recreation opportunities here in our community since then to make them both vibrant as well as first class. He's led key projects that include the development of the city's first built mountain biking trails from a professional mountain bike perspective. He also was responsible for the development of the city's first accessible playground, which is really important in our community, as well as the development of the Vogel-Schwartz Sculpture Garden and Riverfront Park. Let's give Leland a big round of applause. So let's start with why now? And Bryan, I want to turn to you from the perspective of you coming to our state, obviously raising your family here. Why is this so important?
Well, I moved here, I followed Sarah to Arkansas about 15 years ago, and I hadn't spent really much time in this state at all. It was new to me, despite the fact that I grew up in Kansas City, only 6-hour drive from Little Rock, 3-hour drive from Bentonville. And what I first really fell in love with about Arkansas is our outdoors. I remember my first experience floating the Buffalo River, and I could not believe the natural beauty that we had in our backyard here in Arkansas. I'd spent my entire childhood going out west to places like Colorado and Utah. I went to college in Maine. I always had a passion for the outdoors. I didn't realize what we had here in the state of Arkansas until I relocated here 15 years ago. And my background as a political strategist, I've done probably 100 campaigns around the country. I'm always looking for, as a political strategist, and somebody who does polling, message development, advertising, what is that unique selling proposition for a candidate that I'm marketing? What makes that candidate stand out? What makes that candidate unique? And really, whether you're selling a candidate or you're selling a product, or in this case, a state, what is it that makes Arkansas unique? To me, it's our outdoors. You look around us in this region of the country, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, none of these states have anywhere close to the access to outdoor recreation that we have here in the state of Arkansas, whether it's hiking, mountain biking, hunting, fishing, rock climbing, paddling. We have some tremendous world-class outdoor recreation here in the state of Arkansas, and we're the natural state. We should really lean into that identity because that is what's going to set us apart and help us not only from the standpoint of tourism and growing our outdoor economy, but in terms of recruiting and retaining talent here in the state as well, and improving quality of life, which is what so many young people now are looking for when they're deciding, where am I going to start that first job, my career? It's not necessarily a particular job that they're going after. It's where do I want to be? To me, Arkansas could be a place that a lot of people want to be because of the access we have to the outdoors, and you can do it here in Arkansas as a fraction of the cost as a state like Colorado or Utah. So,
it's interesting that you bring up the cost aspect. Having had the opportunity, much like yourself and many others in the audience, of going and participating, whether it be fishing, hunting, or what have you in other places, and often being told once they find out where I'm from, the question is, why are you here when you have the best of this wherever it is you came from? Why did you come here? Do you ever hear that?
Yeah, I tell that story from time to time. I do a fly fishing trip with some friends out in Montana every couple of summers on the Madison River, which is just north of Yellowstone. And the first time I ever did that trip, my guide asked me where I was from, and I told him I was from Arkansas. And he said, "What the hell are you doing out here?" He's like, "You could have saved yourself a lot of time, money, and probably caught a lot more trout if you had just stayed home in Arkansas and fished the White River." And that was interesting to hear that perspective. I mean, I'm on a world-class trout river in Montana, and the guide, who's been out there for decades, is telling me what we have in Arkansas is as good or better.
It's amazing, and it's interesting under the governor's leadership, and obviously yours as well. Katherine, from the perspective of the creation of the Office of Outdoor Recreation, we recognize that it is an economic generator. Give us some of the focus areas that you guys are looking at now to try to help others understand that.
Yeah. And for those that aren't aware, I'll give you a little background of what the Office of Outdoor Recreation is. So we were created by executive order in June of 2021. We were the 16th formal state in the country to create an Office of Outdoor Recreation, which is a huge testament to the leadership in our state who have recognized how important outdoor recreation is, not only to our state's economy, but all of the other great benefits that it provides, from the economic development benefits, business attraction, workforce retention, public health and wellness, a conservation mindset. These offices were created really to champion those efforts and try to grow the sector of the economy even more. This year in 2024, we will be celebrating the 3rd year of the office. The first couple of years were really about building the structure, the formation. This is a totally new part of state government, so we had to be very entrepreneurial and start from scratch. We had to build our mission statement, main goals, priorities for the office, and so we did a lot of that. Relationship building. I put 6,000 miles on the state car in the first 6 months. So spent a lot of time traveling across the state, talking about how important outdoor recreation is, meeting with our communities, our businesses, learning what issues are out there and how we can solve them. So now we've really kind of built that foundation, the relationships, and we've been able to start some really big initiatives. So this year, we are working, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about, the Maumelle Pinnacles Conservation Area Recreation Master Plan. We've hired Craft & Toll, they're in the room, to help us with this plan, and it is going to, long-term vision, connect downtown Little Rock all the way out to Lake Sylvia. This area encompasses 55,000 acres, will be hundreds of miles of trail. In the short term, it's going to look at some of our state park area, Central Arkansas Water, Nature Conservancy land, and how do we connect those better? How do we build more amenities, like more climbing areas, more bank fishing spots, more accessible playgrounds and trails, and so that's a big priority and project. We're also traveling across the state doing regional listening tours. Our next session is actually in Little Rock next Wednesday from 11 to 1 at the Whit Stevens Nature Center. So we'll be there with our partners, Game and Fish, Arkansas Economic Development Commission, and others, talking about resources for the community and for outdoor recreation businesses. Then we're also doing a lot of business development with our partners. Arkansas Economic Development Commission, Runway, University of Arkansas. I was at Sea Otter last week, which is the world's largest cycling gathering out in California. We hosted an Arkansas reception, had about 80 people come, showing everybody there how important outdoor recreation is and cycling is to the state of Arkansas. So we're doing a lot of that. We were at SHOT Show in January, so we're doing a lot of recruitment, a lot of business development, showing the rest of the country how important outdoor rec is to us and to our companies. And then 2 other things, I'll be fast. Economic impact study. So later this year, we will conclude our statewide outdoor recreation economic impact study. We're going to look at some of our biggest assets in the state and what type of value they are to us, and then hopefully be able to positively correlate, if you build it, they will come. So we're working on that. And then also an annual summit. So this past year in December, we held our inaugural Arkansas Outdoor Economy Summit, where we brought together over 100 people for the first time in our history. Everybody from the conservation side to the business side, meshed them all together in a room for the first time and talked about how do we grow outdoor recreation in Arkansas. And we'll be doing that again in collaboration with the Governor's Conference on Tourism in February in 2025. So mark it on your calendars.
So this is going to seem a bit like an accordion. We're going to spread out, we're going to come back in. We're going to spread out, we're going to come back in. Leland, from the perspective of an urban city scenario, and obviously your longtime work with the city Parks and Recreation Department. Give us some idea of some of the projects you're currently working on, and speaking of Katherine, the partnerships required to pull some of those things off.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you, Jay. I want to give a quick understanding of Little Rock Parks. We have 6,000 acres in the city, over 63 different parks, tons of great partnerships. I've been in the city since 2006 and seen a lot of different funding mechanisms to make those projects. Currently, we are working with a lot of ARPA funds, which is the American Rescue Act funds. Those are right now utilizing to redevelop our community centers. We have 5 major community centers within the city of Little Rock, and we are, for the first time ever, starting to develop a senior facility for seniors. So we've had facilities for seniors in our community centers. We have rooms for them and whatnot, but this is going to be a standalone facility. So that's a first for us, really excited about that. And improving some of our ball fields in West Little Rock along John Barrow at our West Central Community Center. Our bigger plan that we're looking at or focusing on is what we went out for last year for community input for our sales tax initiative. The mayor has, and right now, PE, he has 4 or 5 Ps, and Parks is one of the largest one, which I'm very excited about, definitely needed. Our last master plan is 2020, and the one before that was 2001. And when you look in that master plan, it states that our current budget then was $10.5 million. And today we have about $11 or $12 million budget. So with the cost of everything, you can see where we are with the financial aspect of everything. So finding new funding would be huge. We do have some bond funds, and we're using those for new playgrounds and projects across the city. But we're always looking for those newer projects. So let's start.
And that's, that kind of goes, I'm going to accordion back out a bit, Bryan, from the standpoint of the initiative that you and the governor have been pushing in regard to helping the legislature, which obviously approved this, understand that economic development and tourism are linked hand in hand. And Katherine mentioned this just a minute ago, but talking about the 4 opportunity zones that were created to encourage investment and enhance the visitor experience within Arkansas State Parks, 2 of which are in our region, Pinnacle Mountain, which we've already talked about, but as well as the Petit Jean State Park. Can you discuss maybe a little bit about the vision behind this initiative? This group of folks like to think and talk about economic trends, and we certainly see that as a huge trend.
You bet. So I had a chance to go to all 52 state parks last year, and first of all, we have the best state park system in the country, and a lot of that is thanks to the 1/8 cent conservation tax. It's the envy of a lot of other states across this country that we have a dedicated annual funding stream for both our state parks and for game and fish. And really, we have an amazing park system. I was blown away. But that doesn't mean that we can't do better. I mean, we're going to continue to improve our state parks. And one of the ways that we really want to do that is to elevate the experience people have at our state parks, particularly our high visitation state parks, whether that's food, beverage, lodging and accommodations, outfitters, and so forth. And so one of the things we did during this past session last year was passed natural state opportunity zones. And it's a pilot program, and we're starting in 4 state parks. So we got Queen Wilhelmina State Park, we have Petit Jean, we have Pinnacle Mountain State Park, and then we have the Delta Heritage Trail State Park. And basically it offers incentives, tax incentives, for an entrepreneur to come in, whether it's an outfitter or a guide service or somebody who has a lodging concept, like an under canvas or something like that, or wants to open up a restaurant or a coffee shop or something like that in a state park. It offers incentives for them to do so that we can elevate the experience people have at our state parks. What we're looking at specifically for Queen Wilhelmina is a downhill lift access mountain biking park. Arkansas, over the last decade, has really established itself as a mountain biking destination. It's amazing to go to trailheads all across the state and see Utah, Colorado, Arizona license plates. I mean, people leaving states that have long been considered the elite world-class mountain biking destinations in the world are coming to Arkansas now. But the one thing that we do not have is a lift access downhill park. And so that is a priority. We've identified Queen Wilhelmina as the given the elevation there, the town of Mina at the base, as the best opportunity we have in the state to do a lift access downhill park. And these incentives will help us recruit an operator to come in and run that downhill park. What we're looking at for Petit Jean is really elevating lodging, food and beverage, as well as expanding access to mountain biking and rock climbing there at Petit Jean. One of the interesting things we're looking at right now for Petit Jean is a Via Ferrata. I'm not sure if any of you in the audience have had the chance to do a Via Ferrata. They became very popular in Europe. A Via Ferrata, which is Italian for Iron Way, is basically a rock climbing system that was used during World War I and World War II to move troops through the Alps. And they've now become outdoor recreation assets. There's about 3,000 Via Ferratas across the Alps. If you ever go to the Dolomites in northern Italy or to Switzerland, everywhere you go, you can do a Via Ferrata. And it's really a rock climbing that's accessible to a beginner. You're roped in, and anybody can do it. A kid can do it. But it gives you kind of that exposure and adrenaline rush that you get from rock climbing without needing to be, an experienced rock climber to do it. We're looking at Petit Jean for Via Ferrata and a new Monument Trail mountain biking system. And Katherine touched on this a little bit for Pinnacle Mountain State Park. We have the new visitor center there. Loblolly has come in, taking advantage of the incentives through the Natural State.
Now you're talking my language. Ice cream.
So they're doing ice cream like they do at their original location on Main Street, but they're also offering coffee, and then they're expanding to beer and wine and food later this year as well. One of the things we also did during session was we made it permissible now for us to serve alcohol now at all 52 of our state parks. A lot of them are in dry counties, and so that opens up now a new opportunity to a lot of state parks that didn't have it before. But really through the Maumelle Pinnacles master plan, we see a lot of opportunity for Pinnacle. I mean, having that outdoor recreation destination here in our backyard of our state's largest city is really amazing. I mean, I mountain bike at Pinnacle at least once a week, and I'm continually just blown away by what we have. I mean, you can really get out into wilderness within 5, 10, 15 minutes out your back door. You don't even have that kind of access to wilderness and outdoor recreation in a city like Denver or Salt Lake City. It's really amazing what we have. And through this Maumelle Pinnacles master plan, I think we can really expand that in terms of providing access from downtown trails, both paved trails as well as soft surface trails for hiking and mountain biking all the way out, connecting downtown to Pinnacle Mountain State Park, Lake Maumelle, Rattlesnake Ridge, Blue Mountain, ultimately out to Lake Sylvia and the Ouachita Mountains. Northwest Arkansas, of course, is amazing. I love it up there. They're doing some really great and innovative things in terms of outdoor recreation. We have just as many opportunities in front of us here in Central Arkansas as well, and I think this Maumelle Pinnacles master plan, as well as some of the incentives we're offering to outfitters, guide services, to bring in food and beverage to Pinnacle State Park will really help us take advantage of the natural resources we have here. And finally, the Delta Heritage, that's been a project that's been ongoing for decades now, and it's finally coming to its conclusion. Delta Heritage Trail, which will be a roughly 80-mile trail connecting communities through the Delta, will open next year. And what we're really hoping to do is revitalize that area, provide some incentives for outfitters, guide services, hunting lodges, food and beverage to come in and make that Delta Heritage Trail, which has already seen a tremendous investment, both from the state and the federal government. It'll be the most expensive state park, probably in state history by the time it's finished. And it will be amazing, particularly once the bridges are complete and it's open. Some of those spaces back there, when you cross Yonkapin bridge, you cross the White River, the Arkansas River. There are some of the most wild, remote places in the state of Arkansas. But what we really need to elevate that experience for people to ride that full 80 miles is some basic amenities, and we're hoping through the Natural State Initiative Opportunity Zones will provide some incentives for guide services, outfitters, food and beverage to come in and do that to really make it a great experience for people who want to travel not only across the state but from across the region to go experience.
You know, it's amazing to me, and Katherine, I'm going to ask you some economic impact information in just a second, but I dare say a significant amount, I won't give a percentage, but a significant amount of Arkansans have no clue that all of that exists. And we live right here in the middle of it. And yet what you're trying to do and trying to position us, the governor obviously leading this in terms of the best, the destination of all these different things, or to be able to do something here that other folks have to go to Europe to do. It's amazing to me how we have not taken advantage, and it's intentionality, obviously, how we've not taken advantage of some of these assets. I had a CEO call me several years ago now, and they were trying to recruit a CFO from a major metropolitan area, and this person was having problems helping her husband understand why this would be a really good place to live. And the CEO called me and said, hey, would you mind helping us with him while he's here? And I said, sure, what does he like to do? And it was a cyclist. And I happened to have a young person on our team at the time that was an avid cyclist. And so I said, well, we're gonna have him basically do a cycling tour of this whole area. And I thought it'd take a couple of hours. I didn't realize it would take all day, and there would be 2 meals involved because of the trail system that existed. But it's those kinds of things that attract. And oh, by the way, that person came. I will say this: I'm a Clark Griswold type of economic developer, which means I like to stage things that may look like they just were happenstance. And as they came across the Broadway Bridge, at 10:35 that morning, another group was going the opposite direction on their bikes, and they waved and called my guy by name as they went by. This person thought this is what people did every day in Little Rock. And so sometimes you have to stage some, but if we didn't have the assets, we'd have nothing to stage. So, Katherine, from the standpoint of what we already know is, give us some economic impact numbers of why this is so important.
Yeah, so I wrote down quite a few things because I can't remember all these numbers, so you'll have to forgive me as I read these out. The Bureau of Economic Analysis started studying the impact of outdoor recreation on our nation's economy in 2012. Utah was the first state to create an Office of Outdoor Rec after seeing those numbers in 2013. So once we started really understanding this major impact of outdoor recreation, this movement really started to pick up. Since then, the numbers, since we really started studying it, the trend line has consistently gone up. There was a dip during COVID. But that number has continued to rise. And I get the question a lot, when is this going to level out? When are we gonna see another dip? The answer is it's not anytime soon. Researchers across the United States have been studying this for a long time. And the answer is we're gonna continue to rise for many years to come. The numbers for 2022 came out in November. 2023 numbers will come out again November of this year, but in 2022, overall in the United States, outdoor recreation contributed $1.1 trillion to our nation's economy. That's a big number when you just say it out loud, but when you compare it to other industries, it really starts to make sense. Outdoor recreation in America is larger than mining, farming, ranching, and chemical products manufacturing combined. It's a big industry. When you think about it, in Arkansas, it's $4.1 billion to our economy. That's 2.5% share of our GDP and about 44,000 jobs. The top 3 contributors, number 1, boating and fishing. So when you think about Arkansas boating and fishing, we've got some major boat manufacturers: Ranger, Triton, Bass Cat, War Eagle, Sea Ark, Pradco fishing products. Then you also think about some of the guiding and the outfitter services like Gaston's on the White, Mountain Harbor. Second is RVing. Fun fact, every single RV in the United States, except for Airstream, is made in Indiana. So the numbers for RVing for Arkansas comes from people buying RVs or renting RVs or a spot for the weekend. The third, which is no surprise, is hunting, shooting, and trapping. So when you think of hunting, Remington comes to mind, Sig Sauer, Fiocchi, all of our duck lodges, that's big business. Bryan mentioned Pinnacle Mountain State Park. We just opened the new visitor center. It's a huge expansion. We're also marketing the old Pinnacle Mountain State Park Visitor Center for a new concept. So hoping to get people in there, really entice businesses through the Natural State Initiative Opportunity Zones. For state park visitation, I just got these numbers for March. We were at 148,000 people visited calendar year to date, Pinnacle Mountain State Park. It was down a little bit from last year, but those numbers are going to go up for the month of April because of the eclipse. So we'll see those numbers soon. And then for tourism, the 2022 figures, these are comparative to 2021 for Pulaski County. Our visitor spend was up 16%, and employment was up 5.3% over 2021.
You know, what amazes me about those numbers is we're comparing to COVID, when everybody wanted to be outside. When, as Bryan talked about at the trailheads, you had license plates from all over the country in Arkansas in 20 and 21. And so the fact that those numbers are as high as they are, if you go back to 19 or 18, that number is significantly higher. And it's almost like part of this was we were discovered in some ways during COVID because of people's insatiable interest in getting outside. So that it's mind-boggling to me how important it is to all of us, because we're all touched in one way, form, or fashion in that regard. And Leland, before I go to some final questions for the group, you know, Mayor Scott likes to talk about Little Rock being a city within a park. And you talked about the city or the 60 parks, but we can just look outside and see what's happening right before our very eyes. You're gonna have 18 acres of green space out here programmed from a park perspective. Obviously, the downtown master plan talking about becoming river facing instead of everybody having their back to the river, talking about the possibility of a deck park across the interstate. So what does it take to put, obviously you talked about money before, what does it take to bring all of this to fruition beyond the money in terms of what's right before us now and will happen in the next few years?
So I'd say the biggest thing is the partnerships. And one thing I really want to talk about it too is nobody ever gets 18 acres dropped in their downtown district that could be developed for green space and park space. So working with our downtown master plan, which hopefully will be completed in May, has really showed us what are some of the possibilities, a really big picture. One of the biggest things that I took away from the master plan so far is the lack or the low amount of housing in downtown Little Rock. Right now, we only have roughly 4,000 people that actually live in downtown Little Rock. So to make something like an 18-acre park next to a 33-acre park, next to this park here, all these great spaces really work. We need more residents in the area. What the consultants pointed out was that there's a lot of public land that is either river facing or along the Harp or the Harp itself a lot of land that could be developed for housing, whereas we're thinking about developing it from, say, a park space, or we were. I think the biggest thing would be is looking at how do we develop housing so we have more people in the space to use the space. Currently, we're also looking at an extension to the downtown master plan that would focus more on the 18 acres. So that's what we really need, is a detailed plan for what that 18 acres can develop for us, with great public input and all that. I want to also remark on the fact that I believe this space is a great location for connections for all of our assets that we have here currently. So we have great trail access from the River Trail, the Southeast Trail that we're building behind us, the Southwest Trail will be coming from Hot Springs. All of that could come to a center location here and connect. And so I think that's really one of the biggest things. And then figuring out how to also develop other uses from a recreation. We do have some limits on the space because it will always be RDOT property or state property. And so we can't develop, say, a facility that we're going to generate revenue from, or at least that's my understanding at this time. So those are challenges, and so we're trying to create that awesome green space that would impact the users around it. So the Museum of Discovery, the Central Arkansas Library System, I've been working with them. I've been working on this project since inception for several years. Looks like it's almost finished, but they still have roughly, I think, another year to go. Excited about the opportunity, excited about what the next consultants will generate for that space and what we can actually achieve, minus the question of funding. It could be anything from $10 million, right, to hundreds of millions of dollars. Studio Maine did do some really great concepts. They did an award project, and we saw some really neat concepts, some really over the top, and some that could really be feasible and do tomorrow. So again, it's can't wait to see what the possibility is there.
So Bryan, in economic development, you mentioned this early on, quality of place and the ability to attract and retain talent is everything. As Jack Thomas, our Vice President for Economic Development, actually we just competed against Kansas City, for example, and won a project. I'm sure they've competed against us and we've lost in the past. So this isn't about us versus Kansas City, but having grown up there and now having been here for several years, if there was one thing from an urban perspective that you could see Little Rock doing that you believe would have a significant impact on the attraction of talent or the retention of a talent from an outdoor perspective, what one thing would that be?
Yeah, I think about it all the time, like, what do I miss about Kansas City? And really it's being able to go to a Chiefs game or Royals game anytime I want. I mean, professional sports, but of course we're not going to have a professional sports franchise here in Little Rock. And we really have to play to our strengths. And to me, it's our strengths is the outdoors. In terms of Little Rock itself, I mean, I talked a lot about what we have nearby with Pinnacle and out to Lake Maumelle and the Ouachitas. But in terms of Little Rock itself, I mean, I'm excited about what Leland's talking about right there. I think there's some great opportunities here in downtown, but in terms of assets, it's the river. I mean, I think if we have one underutilized asset here in Little Rock that we need to take better advantage of, it's the river. I mean, you look at other cities that in recent years have taken advantage of their location, like Chattanooga, Tennessee, and you see, the bars and the restaurants and all the activity around the river. Like, why don't we do that here in Little Rock? And I know it's easier said than done, and it's, I'm sure, highly complicated. But I do think that is the one underutilized asset that we should really be looking at as a city is how do we got the river trail, which is amazing, but how do we really, in addition to the river trail, provide a better experience for people here in Little Rock and throughout the state and the country to really experience the Arkansas River when they're in downtown Little Rock.
And I think that's really key, because for many years, and Katherine, Leland, you guys grew up in this area, For many years, everybody thought the river was unsafe. And for obvious reasons, from the standpoint of swimming and things that really the river wasn't designed for. But it's truly an asset that we have not taken advantage of. I remember working with the governor's father. We were trying to attract a professional bass fishing major tournament here, and we talked about the river being a great fishery, and yet the access to the river was so constrained that we couldn't actually they couldn't bring the tournament here because there wasn't enough access to get boats in and out of water at the time frame they needed to do it to make that work. And so I think it's really cool what John Burkhalter down the road here has done from the standpoint of that development and creating more access to the river. I think obviously the master plan and its focus on us turning around and beginning to face the river. The chamber on Thursday nights actually having an event. For those of you that have ever come down La Harpe and rounded the curve there, you see a strange looking thing in the bushes that you really don't know what it is. It was originally designed to be an Olympic flame kind of thing. I called it the eternal flame because it was eternally expensive to light and keep lit. So we're looking at replacing that with a piece of sculpture and opening that part of our facility and property to be river facing so that we begin to utilize that as opposed to it being the back of the building type scenario. So I think that is really important for all of us from the state's capital perspective, but also from the standpoint of being the jumping off place for a lot of people that will be coming here from other places so that we can better utilize that. So as we're about to wrap up, how can, and this is open to anyone, how can individuals, businesses, organizations, and others get involved with what you're now doing to support and advocate for what I'm calling the outdoor recreation renaissance?
I would like to say, so Bryan, you mentioned the river. I agree 100%. And so Samuel Ellis here, raise your hand. We have a lease agreement where we just started to, he is building a building down on the Little Maumelle that enters into the Arkansas River. And he's going to be providing bicycle, kayak, access to the river, fishing, all the above for outdoor recreation. The city of Little Rock Parks and Recreation, has a challenging time just to do everything in all these different locations. So how to get involved, be like Samuel or a business that wants to be doing something of outdoor recreation in the city of Little Rock and come to us and say, how can we partner? How can we be a part of what you're doing? We have a great partnership, and that's just one of the partnerships. So go visit Samuel down there. It's his Rocktown Outfitters. He's also in the River Market, renting bikes there. So those kind of partnerships, having more partnerships like that would be a concessionaire or a restaurant on the Arkansas River, on the trail. I agree, it's crazy that we don't have anything today. You go to these other locations and there are restaurants right there on the river trail or their trail access, and you can get coffee or whatnot. So leaning into that idea and working with businesses to do that. I'd be wrong if I never said if I didn't talk about volunteering as a private individual and private donors and partnerships. We have some great projects in Riverfront Park, the Margaret Clark Treehouse, the Vogel Sculpture Garden. All those were privately donated funds to make that work. We would not have what we have in Riverfront without private donors and other individuals. And the Sculpture of the River Market Committee, which you mentioned is one of your projects, we're a part of all of that. We have over $8 million in value of sculpture throughout the city of Little Rock. It was all privately donated. So I mentioned that I have a challenging budget, but when we can work out deals with other people and partner with them, it goes a really long way. And so that's what I would said for that question.
I'll add and echo as well that the river is our greatest asset and we need more amenities, more restaurants, RIP Cajuns. We need to bring back more restaurants on the river.
You had me at beer.
Yeah. But to this point, I would say invest in outdoor recreation startups. There are so many of them across the state, and one of the biggest things that our entrepreneurs are lacking is capital. So investing in entrepreneurs, outdoor recreation startups, hosting cleanups. Keep Arkansas Beautiful does this all the time. They also provide cleanup bags, the little sticks to grab trash. Not only hosting them, but attending them. There are some every weekend all across the state, and especially in Central Arkansas. Host events. Ride to Work Wednesdays is something that Walmart does. They're trying really hard to get a lot of their people to ride to work. They all wear neon, and everybody rides to work on Wednesdays. So host something like that. Sponsor a fishing derby, a local school fishing derby. The more that we can get people outside and encourage people to get outside, the better we all will be.
And I would add to that point, I think one of our big challenges right now, not just as a country, but across the world, is the amount of time kids in particular are spending in front of screens. I think we need to be doing a much better job, and I think we can lead here in Arkansas on this, getting kids off screens and outdoors.
We haven't really even talked about the health aspect of outdoor recreation. And again, from the perspective of everything that has been discussed today, the cool thing about it is people that are already here can engage. They can take advantage of this, as opposed to sometimes we focus on bringing folks from somewhere else to come do something, and the people here don't necessarily feel like they have that same advantage or opportunity. And yet everything we talked about today, anyone can take advantage of, whether you live here or you don't live here. But the health aspect of getting outdoors, and I guess it was Ron talking about taking the walk on the river walk or river trail, and taking that walk and clearing the cobwebs, so to speak, of whether it's me being out in the middle of nowhere playing with dogs in a retriever field trial, or walking around a river on the river trail and thinking about the peaceful aspects that provides. All of this is healthy. It's not only the exercise aspect, but it's healthy to be out there. And so we don't often pay enough attention to that. And yet I think if we look forward 20 years, and especially Leland, you and Katherine, having grown up in this area, if we look forward 20 years from today to what this place could be and what's going to truly transform before our very eyes, not only in the urban area, but around the region and around the state as a whole, this is important to all of us. And it's important that we all recognize that we're a part of it. So let's give our panelists a big round of applause for their time today.